So what are the few tips to write your interpretive essay? I think one tip that I did not tell you so far, and which is not very common to be shared, is when you are writing an interpretive essay, the first tip is that you should write. By that I mean that usually the writers of interpretation or the writers in general, they delay the writing process. They think that they should have an idea in mind and then they should start writing. That doesn't work. It works other way around. Basically, first you write and then you get an idea what to write about. Okay, so you should be able to see what you are thinking to be able to build something on it. So in the first reading that you do, in fact, the writing process starts right from there. In the first reading of your text or short story or the play, one act play, uh, you should take very generous notes in terms of whatever responses come to your mind while you are reading it. No, it is a highly creative exercise that you are doing in your own, isolated space. You're working on it on your own. Probably none of you will find anything on the writing that is assigned to you. Well, some of the material would be out there, but that won't be much help. There shouldn't be much help, in fact. Basically, I wanted you to think about the piece that I assigned to you. You read it, you think about it, and then I'll suggest at least read it 2 times. Okay. In the first reading, make sure you understand the content. There are new words which you don't know, some terms you don't know, or maybe some names of the places you are not aware of. In the first reading, make them clear to yourself. And then in the second reading, take the notes for the ideas that come to your mind while reading that particular text. So at the first level, you are thinking about the literary elements. That is what you are looking for while reading it. What are the things you can call symbol? What are the things you can call setting? What are the things that you can call dialogue? What are the things you can call characters? What are the things you can call similes or metaphor for that matter? What kind of character do you find over there? Are they all major characters? Or some of them are minor characters? What is the nature of the dialogue? Okay. Sometimes it is not necessary for you to know the terms to describe everything in the story or in the text. Sometimes you just feel something different about what you are reading and you want to describe that as such. You can do that by all means. For example, you are aware of the term stream of consciousness, okay, as a form of narrative, okay. But if you are not aware of this term and you come across a kind of writing which is according to stream of consciousness, then you can record your observation that the narrative or the plot is disconnected. There is no connection between the between different parts of the speech which the character is making. You can just make your observation and describe it whatever you think it appears to be. Similarly, about the characters and the plot, if you feel some, for example, you read the plot, you read the story and you realize that the plot is too complex. You can just make that observation as well, that the plot is complex. Okay. That is the second level of reading where you are recording the literary elements. You're observing, you're taking notes for the literary elements. You are reading with an eye of a literary critic, as they call it. Okay. So you are looking at the text from that perspective. What are the literary elements? What makes it different from a newspaper article? Okay. Or from any other kind of text. So many things, as I just named: setting, plot, characters, dialogue, symbols, or similes. Now, in the second reading, once you have done that, you have taken the notes. Remember that the notes that you are taking, they are the foundation of your essay. So take as many of them as possible. Don't think any note that you take, don't think that that note is insignificant or irrelevant. As I told you, it is a highly creative exercise you are engaged in. So every word that you jot down, that is a building block towards a creative exercise that you are engaged in. Okay. So just keep writing the notes or whatever ideas come to your mind. Nothing is more precious than what you think about that particular story. Okay, that is the most, tried thing, so to say. Now that is the second reading. You have done that. Now at the third step, you should now start writing your interpretation based upon the notes that you took. Okay, note taking is a skill. So basically, when you take notes, it is always useful to take notes not just on the text itself, which is in the margins, which are called annotations, but you can also write your notes in MS Word document. All right, so you observe something on over there, but then type it in your computer too. That this is the first idea that came to your mind with reference to this particular line or with reference to this particular paragraph. You observe the characters. You can write this line in the characters. Maybe there is one major character. There are 3 or 4 insignificant characters. You can just describe them. Okay, that these are the insignificant characters. This is the significant character. Now you have those notes with you. So what is very technical about the notes that you are taking is, or something which is helpful for you is that you organize your notes in a proper manner, which is because you took the notes in MS Word, this will be very easy for you, but I'm just going to suggest you. You have all those notes with you. First, organize those notes. You have written quite a number of points with reference to every paragraph or every other line or every third line. You have all those points in MS Word, right? Now, organize them in such a manner that notes of the same kind, for example, all the notes reference to symbol, they should come together in a paragraph. All the notes with reference to characters, they should come together. Similarly, all the notes reference to narrative or plot, they should come together. Just copy paste them and organize them in such a manner that you have a paragraph for each kind of notes. I'm sure you will then think of some themes. Now you have those organized paragraphs with you. Now in the writing process, as you start writing, from the step of organizing the notes, now is the time for you to think of the themes based upon those notes. Okay, now that is the ultimate output of your reading practice. So what themes come to your mind? In most of the cases there would be very simple, basic, universal kind of themes. Don't think of, no, it's in fact, probably what I should suggest you related to theme is, because the whole world of text is open in front of you and it is really hard to pin down one particular theme. How should you know what is the theme? What is the theme that you should mention? So basically, if I can say it like this, that the themes that you write, they usually relate to humans. Okay, so for example, love, hate, human rights, relationships, romance, tragedy, surprises. These are the kind of themes that you come across. In some cases, you might come across the themes related to the relation between living beings, human beings and non-human beings. That also is the possibility. There can be a text about a pet too, okay? But then again, what you are noticing in that is emotions which we call human emotions, right? So if you are describing a cat's love for a human being, again, the concept of love you have in mind is the human love. That is the notion that you have in mind. So in the last step, therefore, you should try to pin down of themes that you can assign to your notes. So you noticed a few symbols, what those symbols stood for. Did those symbols stand for mystery or wonder, magic, love, hate? What did those symbols stand for? Hypocrisy, double standards. So you have to be creative in that, but then I'm sure you should be able to get some idea of what kind of emotion is involved in that particular text. Okay? It could be love for the land. That also is a possibility. Love for one's country, love for one's place, or love for one's home, so to say. Uh, it could be, the relationship between people from two different countries. That also is a possibility. So there are so many possibilities. That is where each one of you will have your own theme drawn out of the symbols that you identify. But then it is not just about symbols. Setting will contribute to that kind of theme as well. Okay, that you are thinking. Plot will also contribute. So, for example, you come across a character who is highly mysterious. Okay, then the plot of the story will be developed in such a manner that there will be mystery in the way the story is being written. Okay, so the writer will not expose everything right in the beginning deliberately, so that to enhance the mystery element in the story. Okay, uh, but this is all that you have to notice now at the last step. Now, the essay that you write, interpretive essay that you write, if you listen to the lectures on how to interpret, how to write an interpretive essay, uh, once I was listening to a lecture by a professor who used to teach here in Lahore, and somebody asked him that, you are speaking on poetry. I don't know what was his theme, but then everybody speaks on this poet from a different perspective. Everybody has a different interpretation. So what is the use of, doing this exercise when everybody is coming up with a new interpretation, a different interpretation? So what do you prove actually as an interpreter, so to say? And his response was that the only thing that you prove is your skill. So it is about your skill. It's not that your interpretation is going to be right or wrong. It's about whether you write your interpretation in a convincing manner or not. Okay, so the theme that you refer to, it should not come out of the story, and you should not try to impose it on the story. Rather, you should see that there is a reason to say that this particular theme exists in this particular story. So you need to support your claim in each paragraph related to each theme, whatever theme you are drawing. Okay, so you should refer to certain symbols, certain signs, certain characters, certain actions, certain dialogues, which make you think that the theme you are describing is a theme in the story. So make those kind of connections. So basically it all goes back to the very basic practice of writing an essay, for WRCM course or for a class even before that. Okay, where you have a thesis statement, you need to support that thesis statement with the help of supporting paragraphs. Okay, but in this case, there you had variety of text, but in this case, there's just one text that you are dealing with, and all those thoughts are coming out of that particular text. I think these are the tips that I can give you to write your essay, interpretive essay. So you were saying something about internal and external. Are you referring to any particular story, or you're generally asking? Well, I don't know really. There are many things which are taken in different ways. Uh, I'm only aware of this internal action kind of thing with reference to writers like Virginia Woolf, James Joyce, who wrote in Stream of Consciousness manner. Okay, they, at a certain point in history of literature, they started thinking that human action is not just external, it is internal as well. So these writers, especially in modern, most of them are modern writers. They basically call the thought as an event. They said that thought also is an action. Okay, therefore, because thought is an action, therefore it should be taken as an action in a story as well. So if a character is sitting and thinking about something, the practice in pre-modern literature was to describe just the action. So action was the real thing. Action had to be, kind of superseding in a particular story. So whole action of the or plot of the story was enforced by or dictated by the force of action. If you read novels by Jane Austen, you know, that is a very good example of how actions, they kind of superimpose themselves. They have to be, well, there are dialogues, certainly. There are dialogues, there are thoughts as well, but those thoughts have to be translated into actions. Uh, and we, the readers, used to get to know about the thoughts of the characters through the action they performed, okay, or through the dialogue they make. Dialogue being an action, okay, so speaking is an action, right? But in modern literature, there was a tendency that action on the page was reduced, as we know the action, that is human movement of the body, speaking, talking, meeting people, attending parties, you know, uh, or in some cases criminal action, you know. If you look at the detective novels, there had to be some action. I mean, the detective has a plot in his mind, but in order to show that plot to the readers, that that narrator or character had to translate that plot into actions, okay. So action kind of superseded. But in this modern fiction, there was a tendency for the writer to observe the thoughts of the characters in such a manner that kind of uh, the thoughts surrounded the action in the whole story, okay, in the whole novel. So thought kind of superseded or overruled everything else. So Virginia Woolf very famously used to say that she used to observe the thoughts of her characters like the uh, falling of the atoms on a metal. So this is a kind of simile. You know what atom is, right? In chemistry, atom, right? It's the particle, right? So when a particle drops on metal, you hear the sound, right? So she used to say that she records the thoughts of her characters as if somebody were recording the movement of the atoms falling on the metal, right? Tick, 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 tick. So those thoughts kind of, you know, saturated the whole story. They filled the whole story. So kind of thoughts became too noisy that rest of the action, which is apparently very loud action, that kind of subsided. So for the writers like this, especially the modern writers, there was a tendency for them to believe that thought is the real thing, not the action. So the responsibility of the artist is not to describe the action. For the modernist, that is a foolish practice because everybody can see the actions, right? We all can see the actions. So what is the difference between an artist and a common man? According to modernists, that precisely is the difference. Artists can read the thoughts as well. Not only can read, but describe them as well, which is very hard. Okay, so you might wonder, at many occasions, if you have seen abstract art, and you might have wondered what is its meaning. You know, it is totally chaotic, right? Abstract art and abstract painting, for example, you would wonder that what is the meaning of it. You know, these are zigzag lines, just chaotic lines and making no sense to us. So the answer to that is, in fact, abstract art is the movement related to abstract art. It started from modern literature, right? Modern movement. It is a modern movement. There are many movements under the umbrella of modernism. Abstract art is one of them. So basically, the abstract artists also believe exactly in the same thing, which is thoughts are louder, than action, so to say. So if an artist describes the thoughts on a painting, what if the thoughts are chaotic, right? An honest artist will then describe the chaos of the thoughts onto the painting, right? Therefore, the content of the painting will appear to be totally abstract, right? So that is the internal action, Internal action is the inward thought which is going on. But then not every thought can be taken to be internal, only if the artist or the writer of that particular story is interested in describing those thoughts as such with that vividity. Only then you can say that these thoughts are internal action. So speech that we read by Clarissa in Mrs. Dalloway, that was one example. So what did Clarissa do? In that particular speech, you can see it in your reading, the extract from Virginia Woolf, Mrs. Dalloway. The only thing she did was she crossed the road. Clarissa in whole that dialogue just crossed the road, did nothing else. But Virginia Woolf did not even bother to describe the action of crossing the roads. You know, there would be traffic, there would be so many risks in crossing the road, but she's not bothered about that external action. Rather, she is focusing on the internal thoughts of that character. Okay, and those thoughts are about the Big Ben, about the flowers and about other things. Now, you would be surprised to know that the whole novel is like that. The whole novel is just like that. There is a very interesting instance of that kind in James Joyce's novel, Ulysses. So there is a speech in that, there is a dialogue in that novel, which spans over 26 pages without even a period or comma in it. Right? So we write a sentence. Right? So we have to stop somewhere, after 2-3 lines. We can't write very long sentence. We forget the subject or we forget the verb. But there is a sentence, not a line, a sentence in the novel which spans over 26 pages without any period, without any punctuation mark. It just goes. Okay. I really can't recall where my book is at this time. I could have shown that to you in the novel, but that is an interesting example of, often our thoughts are uninterrupted, are they not? Sometimes you wake up from the dream and you feel you have been dreaming this for a year or for many, many years. That is uninterrupted thought, right? If an artist wants to capture that, the true artist has to capture that in its exact manner. Okay, so this is one example of. Now that novel, Ulysses, that I'm referring to, the whole of the novel is again about internal thoughts. Actually, it's about a child, who kind of describes it. There is another very interesting novel by that is a German writer actually. It was Tin Drum, Tin Tin DRUM drum, Tin Drum. Drum made of tin, right? It's easily available at places. Gunter Grass, it is by Gunter Grass. We don't have, this kind of long dialogue in that, but there are a lot many internal actions in that. Why? Because the character in that novel, the protagonist in that novel, that protagonist is born, but then probably at the age of 4 years, he stops growing mentally and physically. So he remains child of 4 year or 5 year. Okay. So this character is the creation of the novelist. Okay. Now the writer has observed the world from the perspective of that child. Okay. So whatever he thinks, that child thinks about the world around him. Okay. So that is also about internal action of that particular child. So this is internal external action. I don't know you need that much elaboration, but you just asked and I explained it too much.
But I have read Virginia Woolf, a short story about the mark on the wall. I think that is the one that is full of internal action.
Okay. Okay, I haven't read that, but she is famous for creating internal actions in her work. That is what all her work was about. She had that psychedelic, you might be aware of her mental condition herself. She had a very troubled life, that kind of led to her own suicide later on, so she had a lot of internal thoughts actually. So if her biography is equally interesting, if you read that, so I'm sure she had those kind of internal thoughts in all of her work. That is what she was famous for. But you can relate those thoughts to a text that you're dealing with now. Okay, it's always possible for you to create an interpretation based upon your reading of other text that you have done. That is what exactly you will do. You know, you have read some of the some of the literary text in this class. So whatever information you got over there, the technical information in terms of the literary elements or themes, you can use all that or anything out of that to write your interpretation of this text. This is how it works.
So I was trying to relate my text to psychological fiction, so that's why I asked you about it.
Say it again. Sorry.
So I was thinking I'm trying to relate my text to the psychological fiction. That's why I asked you about
Okay.
it.
Yeah, looks interesting. Yeah, that looks fine. That is how it should be. Yeah. Any other questions about the interpretive essay, students? Sequence, basically you would have an introduction, the first paragraph. You will have supporting paragraphs. How many after the introduction paragraph? How many supporting paragraphs? As many as can help you meet the word limit. And then a conclusion paragraph. Now each supporting paragraph, what I will suggest is think of each supporting paragraph as a theme. As a theme. It is possible to have two paragraphs as for one theme. You might feel that one paragraph is not enough to expand this theme. So you can write two paragraphs or maybe three. Okay, let me go there. So you might have one paragraph or two paragraphs for that particular theme. Now the question is, what will you write? You say that mystery is a theme, for example, or romance is a theme. So what? What will you write in that? You need to support your claim. How will you support that claim? You will support with the help of the literary elements in the story. Okay. Now that you will do for each theme. Now basically what happens is sometimes you might have one theme, suppose, and there are quite a number of literary elements in the story which reinforce that theme. You might like to discuss symbolism with reference to that theme in the first paragraph after the introduction. You might like to discuss setting in the second paragraph with reference to that particular theme. You might like to discuss characters in the fourth paragraph with reference to the same theme, and then plot and narrative in the next paragraph with reference to the same theme. So having one theme is not strange. It is totally acceptable. You might like to just study romance in that particular story because you might feel that is the overarching theme over there. And you might have your thesis statement that this story is about romance, but you need to support it. हाँ वो तो बिल्कुल हो सकता है. That doesn't have to be कि आप पहले symbol discuss करें या characters करें. That is totally your own choice. And then a conclusion. On the other hand, if you think of two themes, then you can, with the help of your notes, you can decide, okay, how many paragraphs would be suitable to explain each theme. Okay, maybe you consider 3 paragraphs for each theme. Then in those 3 paragraphs, again, you can take first paragraph for symbolism, the second for dialogue and characters, and the third for plot and narrative, right? And then start the second theme, again, similar manner, each paragraph for 1 or 2 literary elements with reference to that literary elements, right? Do you have any question?
So if someone has multiple themes, that means multiple thesis statements.
No, if you listen to that lecture, that is where I spent some time. There has to be an overarching thesis statement, which kind of puts all those sub-themes together. Okay. So one overarching theme, for example, could be that if you discuss it with reference to the story Araby, for example, you have read, you have listened to the half of the lecture on it. We might say that the overall theme of the story is disillusionment. Okay. Now this is the overall. Now we need to have sub themes. So the sub themes could be the conflict between romance and reality. That could be one theme. And then it could be, they call it melancholia, or it is the, internal, it is the sadness caused by unfulfilled desires. Okay, so melancholia can be different. Second theme, romance and reality, the first one, melancholia, second one, and the third one could be, juvenile love, which is love of children, for their opposite, gender. So these three could be the sub themes, but three of them reinforce our major theme, which is that the story is about disillusionment. So that child or that young man at the end of the story gets disillusioned by the reality of the bazaar which he visits. Okay, but he reaches that stage through these three phases. That is, he falls in love with a girl, and then he is not able to draw a line between romance and reality, and then he suffers melancholia, okay, or that internal pain because of the unfulfilled love. Okay, three of them put together make the broader theme, which is disillusionment.
Sir, can we score for theme, like each paragraph we supported on each different characters?
Yes, we can, and with each different element also. Not necessarily. What you can do is, this is a good question, because I had this thing in my mind. So basically, in the introduction paragraph, when you write your thesis statement, you should have this question: what else will you write in that paragraph? So basically, in that paragraph, when you write your thesis statement, you should describe your thesis statement a little bit, and in that description, you can draw on some of the sub themes which you want to expand in the rest of the paragraph. So for example, you might begin your interpretive essay about the Araby by stating that I argue in this interpretive essay that this story is about disillusionment of the character. Okay, and then you can continue to write the protagonist in the novel undergoes an experience of disillusionment through the phases of juvenile love, melancholia, and romance. Period. So you described it. You can furthermore say that melancholia is that internal feeling of sadness caused by unfulfilled love. Okay. So you use the first paragraph, number one, write the thesis statement and any sub themes that you are going to expand in the rest of the essay. Number two, describe some of the terms that you use in that paragraph. You want to introduce your interpretive essay to your reader in this paragraph. Therefore, use it either to describe your thesis statement or sub-themes, or describe any unusual words that you use in this paragraph. And then remember to very strictly expand just the first paragraph in the rest of the essay. If you didn't mention any theme in the first paragraph, don't bring that theme in any of the paragraphs in rest of the essay. That will ruin the structure of your essay. Okay, so basically you wrote the first paragraph, that is summary of your interpretive essay. Then take one thing, expand that, and take the second thing, expand that, third thing, expand that, and then write the conclusion. So you can randomly pick the symbols and all that, but just be careful. That is something that helps, maintain the unity of theme. Okay, don't discuss more than one theme in the same paragraph. That won't make any sense to the reader. So basically, you are giving you're giving thematic structure to your essay. So first theme, discuss this theme first, then this, then this, then this. But each theme can be discussed with reference to any of the examples from the text. Those examples could be any of the literary elements. There is no order. Any literary elements which you think reinforce the theme, or those examples could be the characters, okay, from the story. You don't need resources. Why are you asking for resources? What do you want to understand out of it?
I want to understand anything
State what?
Sentences in the end.
No, that is not a requirement. My what I said was, if you borrow any material outside your story, then you must cite that. There is no requirement of that.
But if we take only an idea, then
Cite that. Yeah, cite that. It is very natural, you know. For example, if you are using the word internal dialogue or internal action, you might have to look up the definition for that. If that is the case, then give reference to the definition wherever you take it from, right? So, you know, imagine the real exam condition that you have to, you know, experience when you are in an exam. You are not given access to any material as such. You have to create an essay out of your own mind. Okay, that is an ideal scenario in which you should write. But then at the same time, as I told you, that if you need to consult any source which helps you to understand a concept, you can use that resource, but cite that.